Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
I don't know what to do here today, folks. I don't know what to do. My buddies over at the Fox News Channel, the All-Star panel there on the special report with Britt Baer, they misunderstood. They misunderstood what I said. Just said, I don't know what to do about this. Should I ignore it? Should I talk about it? Should I move on? I don't know what to do about it.
From sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
They misunderstood me. Sounds like they... Not on purpose. Sounds like they really didn't understand. I realized you had to listen a whole hour and a half to put it all in context, but still. So I don't know what to do. The rule of thumb is you just ignore this stuff and move on. Well, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to think about it. Hi, folks. How are you? Great. Great to have you here, Rush Limbaugh. Open Line Friday, wrapping up another big week of broadcast excellence. It is a delight to have you here. Even those threatening you're never going to be here again, it's great to have you here. Telephone number 800.
Okay, that's it. I mean it now.
800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. What the heck? Let's just go ahead and try to deal with this. Let me ask a question. I'm going to ask Mr. Stern. He's normally a sycophant, but I want you to not be a sycophant here. I want you to tell me you listen to the whole program. You listen to this first hour where I delve deeply into, did I not characterize what happened with Trump on MSNBC and Matthews' whole abortion as an utter disaster for the party, not just Trump, but for the party as it relates to the election in November? Did I not point out how the Democrat Party was in the midst of I think they're depressed out there. Now, Hillary is losing to Bernie in New York. Did you see those numbers? Or is that's a national poll? The national poll, even better. Hillary's losing to Bernie. Hillary cracking up to a Greenpeace representative, asking her questions about fossil fuels and whether she's taking money from big oil. Hey, Greenpeace, she's taking money from everybody. Everybody owns her. You should get in line. So my point was, the Democrat Party, the voter turnout in their primaries is way, way down. There's no excitement. There's absolutely nothing dramatic. And even the race between Hillary and crazy Bernie, because everybody in the Democratic Party assumes that when it's all over, Hillary's the nominee by de facto, and nobody's excited about that. And here comes this thing with Trump on MSNBC, and this is the kind of thing that can totally energize a moribund campaign. And I went to great pains to explain yesterday here that, to me, what all of this ultimately should be about is defeating them, defeating the Democrats, defeating Hillary. Folks, we got one shot at this. You know, I have spent a lot of time talking about it. I try to avoid being repetitive sometimes. Other times I realize it's necessary to keep pounding the same things. We have undergone 7 years here of an administration which is transforming, undermining almost every institution and tradition that was founded and grew that defined this nation's greatness. We're also in the midst of an overwhelming demographic shift. I just saw something last night. The Pew Research Center has done a really involved demographic survey and study and has come up with some predictions of what the demographic shifts that are going to happen in this country between now and 2050. And it is going to be, in terms of every demographic that you want to discuss, it's going to be an entirely different country. It's going to be an entirely different country from what it was founded as. And the only thing that can maintain this country and see to it that your kids and your grandkids grow up into a country such as the one you did, just like you did. The only thing is principles that we have had handed down to us since our founding being maintained. ideas, principles, philosophies that unite all these different groups, because this demographic survey is it's pretty telling. If all of these different demographic groups balkanize, you can say goodbye. I mean, there's always going to be an America, don't misunderstand, but it's not going to be the America that was founded. And that's the objective of this current Democrat Party, is to rid all evidence of the founding of this country as much as they can, including as much of the Constitution as they can get away with. This election is key to me. I have made no bones about it. I have not hidden. I've not withheld my belief that the most destructive force in the country today is liberalism, the left, the worldwide left. But it's focused here. The Democrat Party is where it resides, and it's in every one of their special interest groups, and they are doing everything they can to undermine everything they believe an unjust and illegitimate majority founded, and they are succeeding. We got the new unemployment numbers today, and everybody's clapping their hands. Unemployment rate 5.0, another 215,000 jobs, big whoop. To get back to where we were before Obama took office, we need to be creating 500,000 to 600,000 jobs a month, not 200,000. We haven't even reached replacement levels yet in terms of what we lost. But the telling figure remains the labor force participation rate, 93 million Americans not working. I don't care what you want to jimmy the number with, the unemployment number, 5%, it's meaningless. You simply can't have a growing economy. You cannot have GDP. You cannot have economic output. You cannot have economic growth that creates this rising tide that lifts all boats. You simply cannot have a society with an opportunity for an improved standard of life with this many people not working. It simply isn't possible. And this many people not working is exactly what the forces arrayed against us choose. It's exactly what they want. Every one of those 93 million, the vast majority of them, are needy, nevertheless. They have to live, they have to eat, they have to drive, they have to watch TV, they have to make cell calls, and if the government provides all of that and more, hunky-dory for them. But that doesn't lead to economic growth. No economic growth leads to very, very little economic opportunity for the middle class, which is what this country has always been. That's been the American dream. And all of this is by design. You know, I look at these demographic figures and I look at the way millennials, they don't know what's happening. They think they do. And what they're dealing with is this shifting demographic. There is bitterness and angry in the millennial group over different things that you and I are bitter about, but there still is bitterness. What they have concluded is that the accident of their birth explains their plight, meaning they just had the great misfortune of being born after peak America. It's just happenstance. They just happen to be born after America's best days. They haven't the slightest idea, because nobody has taken the time to try to tell them, because the primary opposition party has not taken the time to try to tell them. They don't realize that it's not just America's best days are behind us and it's a quirk of fate. They have not been told that this is all happening because of specific policies implemented by President Obama and the Democrat Party. That's why America is in decline. We can't afford 4 more years of this, because 4 more years of this equals a generation of it. The ground that would be lost in 4 more years of Hillary Clinton or Bernie, it doesn't matter. The ground that would be lost, not unrecoverable, but we're not talking about the opportunity that we have now. We've got to stop this. And so everything that happens on this program, while you might have to wade through it to get to it, because I assume you listen every day, and I assume you understand some things and remember some things. I assume you listen here in context. Everything that happens on this program is designed, is purposed, let's put it this way, is purposed to illustrate that the problems we face are really not found in the Republican Party, except that part of the party that is the establishment that doesn't care to fight back against any of this. The Republican Party that even now is salivating, turning over their own convention so they can. Karl Rove's admitted it, a fresh face. They've admitted it now. The RNC, Reince Priebus, they've admitted it now. They're looking at the convention, as told you, they're looking at the convention as an opportunity to get their person, one of their people from the establishment installed in there, rather than Cruz or rather than Trump. They have shown, folks, the Republican establishment has shown they're not interested in pushing back against any of this. They've shown they're not interested in stopping any of this. The last 7 years, intelligence guided by experience. We know we have 7 years of no pushback. We have 7 years of not even attempting to push. In fact, we have 7 years of we should be crossing the aisle more. We have 7 years of hearing we need to reach out, work with the Democrats. We need to show the American people we can govern. We can make Washington work. No. It's the exact opposite. This election is really too crucial. I have no control over who the nominee is going to be. Despite what many people think, I don't. And there isn't anybody else in media who does either. Like Rumsfeld once said, you go to war with the army you got. You can sit there and pretend it's not as good or whatever, but you go to war with the army you got. And they really jumped on him for that, by the way. The drive-bys. So whenever anything happens out there that I think is going to continue to mischaracterize, damage the entire opposition to the Democrat, which is us. Whether you want to call it the Republican Party, conservative movement, whatever. Whenever anything happens, like Trump on MSNBC and this abortion debacle with Chris, when that happens, I go into damage control for the sake of the November election, for the sake of preserving the opportunity we have to beat these people and roll them back. And what happened was a replay of Romney and the contraception remark, a question which led to the war on women. You can disagree with, of course, this is not quite the same thing. The effect is the same thing. We've revitalized and energized a moribund, asleep, depressed Democrat Party. We have done it on the basis of a hypothetical question. And this is where my good friends at the Fox News Channel take issue with me, particularly Dr. Krauthammer, said that I was defending Trump. And Charles Lane, the Washington Post, was defending Trump on the basis that he was asked a hypothetical question. It wasn't defending Trump at all. If I was defending Trump, I wouldn't have categorized what happened as an utter disaster. I wouldn't have categorized it as a dire emergency. I was not defending Trump. I was trying to explain why Trump. It's pointless to go any further with this. I've been doing this since September, and if you don't want to understand it or accept it, I got to start now. He just doesn't care about this stuff. He's got to phone this in, and he doesn't. This has never been. He's never been a political animal. He lives in an entirely different world. He gets things done outside of politics. He gets things done with his own way, but now he's running for president. That's in the political arena. He's got to wise up and figure it all out, and he hasn't in many ways, like how to handle a pro-abortion question or whatever question he gets about abortion. He knows he's to say pro-life, and after that, it's a wing and a prayer, and it isn't going to cut it. So when it happens, my effort's not to defend Trump. It is to try to limit the damage.
Well, then, Rush, if you're really serious, why don't you just say that Trump should get out, because that's the real damage.
I know some of you shouting that right now. If you're trying to limit the damage, why don't you tell Trump? I told you yesterday that's not the way to do it, folks. Everybody in the world has tried. I've had people endorse other people that come out, condemn Trump. All it does is cement the Trump people to him even tighter. But again, that falls into a category of I don't endorse during primaries, and I'm not going to change the policy, and I've explained why. The point of this is not to make excuses. The point of this is to try to further explain what I'm about. Sometimes I feel like I'm not alone, but in a very small club of people whose focus is beating Democrats. I would vote for Daffy Duck before Hillary Clinton. I would vote for anybody, but whoever. I don't care who the Democrats nominate. I'm not going to vote for them, and I'm going to actively campaign against them or advise or commentate against them. I think they pose the greatest threat to the country continuing as founded that we have faced in my lifetime. The Democrat Party has always represented that threat, but it has never been as potent as it is today. And they're 7 years into, well, they're more than 7 years, but 7 intense years controlling the policy implementation apparatus of this country for 7 years. They've gotten closer to their objective than ever before. I got to take a break. We'll come back and I guess share with you some of the sound bites from my buddies over at the Fox News Channel we get back. So don't go away.
Unfiltered and unstoppable. Rush on the EIB Network.
Okay, we'll start with Judge Napolitano. Last night on Special Report with Brett Baer during the All-Star panel. The judge made the panel. Very cool. So Brett Baer said, okay, Judge, the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls in Wisconsin, Ted Cruz slightly ahead of Trump. Trump in Washington today to meet with the RNC. By the way, that Real Clear Politics average might be, but I mean, Cruz is sweeping in Wisconsin. He's up 10 now in, I think, 2 different polls. And in one of these polls, what is it, the public policy polling poll, I think they're tied within margin of error. But in another one of these polls, Cruz is beating Trump and women by like 19%. Trump is not close in Wisconsin, according to all but one of the polls there is the point. At any rate, Brett Baer says, okay, Judge, Trump's in Washington today, had this meeting with the RNC. What are your thoughts?
If he truly believes this, it is so contrary to American culture, even by the fiercest of pro-life people. It's hard to believe that he would think that this would get him any votes. Rather, it shows a lack of serious thinking about a very, very serious topic. I think that this statement alone, combined with his likely loss in Wisconsin, will begin the descent of Donald Trump's popularity in the Republican primary.
Well, let me sum that up because the question that we edited the answer here, and he was actually being asked about Trump's comment to Chris Matthews on MSNBC. And our question here was about much larger things. So we cut to the chase. And the judge thinks it's over for Trump. Now, the judge is one guy, but the judge thinks it's over. He's not the first to say that he thinks it's over for Trump. But his instinct is, hey, this issue, that question, that answer, to show such a lack of serious thinking about such a very, very serious topic, meaning abortion, pro-life, how incendiary it is in presidential politics throughout American culture. And the judge's point for Trump to appear so, unprepared, so unserious in his thinking about it. He thinks this is it. And it's the end of the line. This is going to be the beginning of the end for Trump. So that's just one thought. Coming next, we have Charles Lane, who was also on the All-Star panel, followed by Dr. Krauthammer, and then a soundbite from the Today Show today, all related to what we're talking about. Hang in, one more obscene profit break here, and we'll get right back to it. We're back. Open line Friday, 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, we'll get the phone calls eventually. Back to the Fox News a special report with Brett Baer and the All-Star panel. By the way, the polling, there are 2 different polls out there that has Cruz up by 10. The Fox News, Fox Business poll, and the Marquette Law School poll. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, did not we have a public policy polling poll yesterday showed Trump up or Cruz? Yeah, one of them was up by 1. It's a margin of error, like 36-35 or some such thing. And then the internals show that Cruz is, Trump's negatives with women are just off the charts. So Cruz was up by 19 in one of these two polls. I forget which. But what threw me was Bret Baier saying the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls has Cruz slightly. He's not slightly. 10 points is not slightly ahead. So they must be averaging in the public policy polling poll. But whatever. It's a big spread. And when you get into the internals and you find the negatives for Trump, they're pretty... In fact, let me find something real quick here before we move on. This also from public policy polling. These are favorable, unfavorable numbers. Trump, 29. These are national. These are national numbers, favorable, unfavorable. Trump, 29, favorable, 63, unfavorable. Ted Cruz, 30% favorable, just 1 point ahead of Trump, unfavorable, 58% unfavorable. Kasich, 41% favorable, 39% unfavorable. Romney. Don't know why Romney's in this, but he is. 23 favorable, 65 unfavorable. Hillary, 37 favorable, 55 unfavorable. Bernie Sanders, 41 favorable, 48 unfavorable. You realize in this list of 6 candidates, Trump, Cruz, Kasich, Romney, Hillary, Bernie, nobody is liked. There isn't anybody except one candidate who has a higher favorable than unfavorable rating. And of all people, it's Kasich. Kasich also happens to be the one the least heard from. So I think that's how you chalk it up. I mean, if you want a campaign slogan for 2016, it'd be everybody sucks. There's not one other than Kasich. Everybody is disliked by a far greater number of people than like them. Now, we don't have numbers for whoever the Republican establishment might choose to be their nominee in a contested convention, like Jeb or Paul Ryan or whoever else. And they've made it clear that that's their, they're thinking about it. Karl Rove has let the cat out of the bag. He's basically said it might revive our negative, unfavorable, positive numbers. It might energize the party, get somebody in there that doesn't have all these negatives attached to it. So clearly, look, we don't even need these people to say it. We know they're pondering this. We know that they are trying to come up with a way to deny either Cruz or Trump the nomination. Okay, now back to our good buddies at the special report with Bret Baier and the Fox News Channel. This is Charles Lane. Bret Baier, he's a Washington Post. Baier says, Trump allies and supporters say that when Trump was on MSNBC, he misspoke. He shoots from the hip all the time, and they felt the questions are rapid fire from Chris Matthews, and Trump was having trouble, but he straightened it out. Trump straightened it out. He's going to bounce right back. So, Charles, what's your take on that?
Rush Limbaugh supplied him with an excuse, which was a kind of a strange excuse, was he was just trying to pander, is basically what Limbaugh came up with. Nevertheless, you're right that he has always thrived off the image of somebody who's a victim of a media ganging up on him. And so he will attempt to play with that. On the other hand, Brett, I would say that his reaction, which was to back off and sort of correct himself several times, was an unusually defensive moment for Donald Trump. He normally, admits nothing and just presses on as before. The mere fact that he felt he had to correct this time, that was kind of unusual.
Right. Now, the only thing I want to address here is that I was trying to supply Trump with an excuse. Can I remind you of what the umbrella here is? I realize I don't every day start the program by saying, folks, here's today's objective, and everything I say today falls underneath this objective or this umbrella. I don't do that every day. I just assume that with 27 years under my belt, now to our 28th year, and I assume with people knowing me, they understand where I'm headed, what I'm about, what animates me, what my objectives are. I've made no bones about the fact that I think the most destructive force that we face today is liberalism in the Democrat Party. And I realize it may be quaint to put it that way, but we've backed it up with various reasons, policies and so forth, the very things which are destroying the traditions and the institutions and the principles that founded this country. So when this thing happens, if somebody reads what I say and doesn't hear me explain the purpose of a particular program on a particular day, the last thing I was doing was offering Trump an excuse. The objective for me, so I don't know who's going to get this nomination. I really don't. And I don't think I have a thing to do with who does and who doesn't. And I don't think anybody else does either. The proof is Democrats would have never won an election in the last 27 years if I had the power a lot of people assigned to me. But they have won a lot of elections. They have won far more elections than I would ever have wanted them to. So I don't live under any illusion here. I'm not running around with an inflated head that can't fit inside a doorway. I'm not under any misconception about what I'm able to accomplish or do, except within the confines of my career. Whoever the nominee of this party ends up being, I want them to win, because that is far more preferable to me than Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or anybody else that they might nominate if they decide they don't like Hillary, if they decide she can't win. So if they try to do their own manipulations and end up putting Joe Biden in there, I don't care who it is. I don't want them to win. I want the opposition to the Democrat Party to triumph, and I want it to win. And when the opposition screws up, I want to try to limit the damage of the screw-up and limit the damage of the mistake. And this was a disaster that happened because of the subject matter. It was designed to be a disaster. It was designed to destroy Trump. It was designed to take him out. It was designed to once again do much more than that. Matthews is a political hack, like Stephanopoulos is, like they all are in the Democrat media. And the objective for them, they never forget their objective. Their objective is to beat us. They want to beat us more than they want to beat ISIS. They want to stop us more than they want to stop ISIS. They think Trump's going to be the nominee. They've got themselves convinced Trump's going to be the nominee. They are doing their best to destroy who they think our nominee is going to be. We're not. We haven't even gotten around to helping destroy Hillary Clinton because half of us are still trying to destroy who we think is going to be our nominee. So in that, we're on the same playing field with the Democrats. The Democrats are trying to destroy whoever our nominee is. They're in the process of trying to already destroy that person. And I'm trying to stop that from happening with little I can do by limiting whatever damage might happen when somebody says something unfortunate, stupid, inexperienced, naive, whatever it is. Not excusing Trump. I was trying to mitigate the damage by explaining what I thought he might have, why he might have screwed up. But everybody else wants to look at things like, oh, that's it, got to get rid of him. We don't have any control over that. And we're going to be, we already face a really precarious situation if things don't play out right. Because depending how this happens, a bunch of Cruz voters may get their noses out of joint and decide not to vote, like a number of them didn't in 2012. And the Trumpists, the odds are they're not going to show up if they think the nomination's been taken away from Trump. If they suspect anything outside the normal Democrat process has taken place here. And you can kiss victory goodbye if any of these things happen. You can kiss it goodbye right now. And all the rest of this remains an academic exercise. to prove who's the smartest, who's the cleverest, who's the best conservative, who's the best moderate, who's the best this. The war has begun, and we haven't entered it yet. We are still in the circled firing squad phase. And I don't like being in that phase. So it wasn't pandering. It wasn't an excuse. It was an attempt to explain to people who want to support Trump why he might have screwed it up. It was an attempt to explain to people who don't want to support Trump why it might not be what you think it is. There might have been a reason for this happening that is short of unacceptable. I don't know. Maybe it's a lost cause. And maybe I should begin every program by saying the purpose of this program today is to once again explain why we must beat the Democrat Party. Everything I say today is designed to do everything we can to not damage ourselves and to end up defeating the Democrat Party. In fact, might even put that in the show open. Might have Donovan record it, put it in the show open so there's no mistake about what's going on here. Another quick timeout. Hang in there, folks. I'll be right back with much more. Don't go away.
For your convenience, broadcasting almost 100% in English with just a little Spanish lingo. Rush on the EIB network.
Johnny Rivers in Memphis in 1965 in the bumper rotation here. Bloomberg News just cleared a story, fascinating premise. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker said that voters in Wisconsin are about to shift the dynamic of the Republican presidential race. And he cites the Marquette University Law School poll showing Cruz with a 10-point lead over Trump in Wisconsin. 42 delegates are up for grabs in the primary next Tuesday. And what Walker says in the story is that a Cruz victory over Trump in Wisconsin will reset the entire race. Said this on an interview, with all due respect, on the Bloomberg TV show. He said, Ted Cruz is in this unique position to unite the party because you've got a group of the Republican electorate out there that have been in the caucuses and the primaries who've said they've had it with Washington. I'm fed up. I want an outsider. But Walker said, up until recently, I don't think there's a person out there, including all of you in the media, who would say that Ted Cruz is an outsider. I mean, he's one of the few people I know who didn't just talk that way in a campaign. He got to Washington, actually, oddly enough, did what he said he was going to do. His point here is, and this, I alluded to this earlier this week, we're in a lull, folks. We're in a lull where all we got is polls. We have recent results, but they're now a week old. We are in a lull. All we've got is polling data, just like it was long before Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary happened. And I said, when those two things happen, we've got hard results. We've got an actual reality. It's going to change all of this that people are flapping their gums about right now. And that's Walker saying. If Cruz wins on Tuesday, he believes that this starts a brand new slate and it resets the race and it begins the end of Trump and it sets Cruz on the way to the nomination. That's what Scott Walker means. He believes that Ted Cruz, with a victory in Wisconsin on Tuesday, will be in position to unite the party. He sees a Cruz victory over Trump in Wisconsin resetting the race. Meaning, he believes that Trump losing, combined with the Cruz victory, changes the entire thinking, changes the momentum, totally changes the inertia. Because he believes that a Trump defeat at this stage, when just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, everybody was assuming Trump had already won it. It was in the bag. It was just a matter of time. Get to 12:37 and that's it. Everybody was talking, the establishment wringing their hands. What can they do to stop it? And Walker's point, he doesn't say all this, as I'm interpreting what he means here, that a Cruz win is going to totally change this thinking that's in the bag for Trump and may, in fact, turn everything upside down. And Trump, for the first time in the campaign since last August, might actually be looked at as somebody that's going to lose. That's what he believes a Cruz victory represents. Do not discount what he is saying. Do not discount what he's saying. I think there's a and I think, well, I know it's not winner. We're not talking about winner take all. Scott Walker's not talking about delegates here. He's talking about attitudes. He's talking about this great invisible force called momentum and doubt. He's talking about something. I know that it could all be upset again when we get to New York, but you can't sit there and say Trump was always going to lose Wisconsin. He wasn't always going to lose. That's the point. He was going to sweep Wisconsin and everything else. Now he's 10 points down. The Trumpists are getting concerned. They won't tell you so, but they have to be getting concerned. Any normal human being would be. This wasn't in the cards. This wasn't supposed to happen. So you have a guy who endorsed Cruz. Of course he's going to take advantage of it. He's out there. He's putting the thought in people's heads. You know what? If our guy wins this makes this a whole new race. I mean, this is going to start a Cruz landslide. This is going to actually put into motion what the Cruz people have believed. One-on-one, Cruz is going to pick up all these anti-Trump votes in the primary and just keep winning and winning and winning. You can't blame him for trying to create that mindset.
Rush Limbaugh, simply brilliant on the EIB network.
Well, I didn't get a phone call in the first hour. Sorry about that. I always try. I'll make up for this in the next busy broadcast hour, because we got a full board of people that want to weigh in. So if you're one of them, hang on. If you're calling, keep calling. You'll eventually find a way in. Back in a sec. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh. This the EIB Network from the one and only Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. It's Friday. Let's just
And
keep
now,
rolling.
from sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
And you can talk about whatever you want. It does not have to be politics. And by the way, I shouldn't have to say this. If you want to criticize me, you can. You can do that any day of the week, by the way. But if you want to do that, you know, I'm the politest host in the country. That's been established for decades. You have nothing to fear calling this program. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program. I want to go through some of the other news that's out there. And hopefully Mr. Snerdley be standing by. I'm going to try to get the phone calls before the opening segment here ends, because I really, on Friday, I do try to get calls started in the first hour, and I didn't get that done. From the NBC News Columbus, Ohio affiliate, I don't know if the governor is aware of this, but a group of women from the Cleveland area suing the Ohio Department of Taxation. They are fighting to eliminate the tax on tampons and mini and maxi pads. The lawsuit states that this kind of tax is discriminatory. State Representative Kristen Boggs agrees. These are not luxury items, and they should not be taxed, she says. This is another tax that women have to pay, that there's no similar association for men, that they don't have to pay. So you see, my friends, not only should contraceptives be provided gratis, but now there should be a total elimination of sales tax on tampons and pads on the basis that they're not luxury items. Every woman needs them, and men do not have to buy them. There's nothing like the male equivalent. And, of course, right in there is a Democrat Party agreeing with this. Oh, yeah, it's just more of women are victims and somehow of men here. you've got a Democrat state representative agreeing with the premise here. Now, what do you think Kasich would do? Oh, man, he'd go out, he would go to the store, he would surround himself with tampons and pads, and he would no doubt talk about how unfair this is and hug whoever was there after making the speech about, well, maybe, I don't know, he maybe do a confetti shower with tampons instead of the usual confetti. Columbus resident Carly Zuba said, I don't believe we should be taxed on something that's a necessity. To be taxed for it, it's kind of unfair, said Kelsley Kilnarton. Zuba and Kilnarton are not a part of the class action complaint, but they agree that taxing tampons and pads is wrong. There's a class action lawsuit about this. Yes, it's a medical need. It's something we need just for our daily lives, says Zuba. The state representative, Kristen Boggs, says that feminine hygiene products are not only needed for a woman's livelihood, but also so that they can participate in society, like going to school or work. I think there's a lack of understanding that they are medically necessary products, and I think that as such they should not be taxed. I wonder, have these women heard of there's a group of women out there that does not believe in tampons. You know that, right? They have a name. They actually have there shouldn't be anything that interrupts the flow of nature. Just like there are people out there who are dead set opposed to hearing aids. I'm not kidding. I encountered them when I went deaf. They got mad at me. I heard from them when I said I was going to get a cochlear implant. And they're activists for deafness. Hey, it happened to you. Hey, it's natural. You're not be screwing around with it. Anyway, the lawsuit states that the Ohio Department of Taxation collects about $11 million a year from menstruating women. You ever heard of such, that they categorize tax revenue based on such things? According to Kristen Boggs, the state representative, if the court finds that this tax violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. Can you imagine Scalia with this one? Trying to find the original intent? Trying to find... Oh, yeah, the founders clearly intended here that there not be a tax on tampons. Many medical items in Ohio are not taxed. The lawsuit also states that women spend on average about $70 a year on tampons and pads, and that equals about $4 in taxes annually, depending on local taxes. Well, no, because the total here is $11 million. That must be a lot of women in Ohio to get this yearly tax total up to $11 million. If it's $4 in taxes a year per woman, and this is not the first time this legislation was introduced last summer to ban the tax, and of course it didn't go anywhere. So it is back. The Fox Business Network poll: Cruz up in Wisconsin by 42%. This is Wisconsin likely Republican voters. Trump is at 32%. Kasich in third place at 19%. Among just those who say they will definitely vote, Cruz's lead over Trump widens to 13%, 46-33, and Kasich loses 3 points down to 16. This is among people who are definitely going to go out there and vote. And this is what I was referring to earlier as a huge gender gap. Women back Cruz over Trump by a 19-point margin, 46-27. The two candidates are much closer among men. Cruz gets 40% support from men, and Trump gets 35%. This story is also at the Politico. Headline: Trump's rock-bottom ratings with women. Just how bad are Donald Trump's problems with women? Bad enough that roughly 70% of women voters in recent polls say they have a negative impression of him. And that was before the news coverage of his threat to spill the beans about Heidi Cruz and his talk about punishing women who have abortions. Trump is already so dangerously underwater with women voters that it raises questions about whether a GOP ticket led by the billionaire could lead to an historic gender gap and blowout defeat. That's the opening paragraph in the Politico story about this. And I've got a woman who wants to talk about this. Well, looky here, from Ohio. This is Cindy in Ohio, in Springfield, Ohio. Cindy, I'm glad you waited. It's great to have you, and you're up first today on Open Line Friday. Hi.
Yes, thank you. I've listened to you down through the years, so I'm glad to talk to you. I did want to preface my remarks with saying that I am a black Republican, and also I have been a Trump supporter, so I'm definitely minority of the minority. Having some problems now. He just seemed like, I feel like he kind of stepped over the edge as far as the campaign manager situation. I felt like he should have reprimanded his campaign manager. Now, the man said...
Wait, hold it a minute.
Yeah.
Did I misunderstand you? I stepped over the edge? What did I do here?
No, not you. I was talking about...
you're using
Donald
the
Trump.
you in a generative generic. Well, right, you're talking about Trump. Yeah, got it.
Yes, I was talking about Donald Trump.
Say,
I
what
feel
did
like
I do
by
now
not
on that?
reprimanding his campaign manager. Either his campaign manager has Alzheimer's, or he's being dishonest when he says he didn't remember, he didn't know, or whatever. That was his original thought. And then as far as the Heidi Cruz...
Wait just a second. Get the Heidi Cruz in a minute. This is my point, Mr. Snerdley. If this Corey Lewandowski thing had happened back in August, September, maybe even October, people would be marveling at it. They'd be marveling at the way that Trump handles these things. Some would maybe be laughing at it. But here we are now. We're in March when this happened. And it's an entirely different... There's no openness. There's no consideration. There's no humor. There is no tolerance whatsoever. There's no admiration. In the old... When Trump would double down and support his people, when he would double down on an insult when criticized for it, people would marvel. They would applaud you. Look at this. This guy, he's showing everybody how it's done. This guy, they hit him and he doubles down on it. They're not talking about Trump that way here. And not just over the Lewandowski thing. So that's why Scott Walker has a point about what the results in Wisconsin could be. Okay, the next thing you want to talk about was Heidi Cruz.
Okay, the Heidi Cruz, I feel like that, I think the families, the wives should be left out of it. Obviously, Melania Trump she was probably proud of her pictures, okay, but the picture as far as Heidi Cruz, to strike out at her, I mean, anyone can find an unflattering picture of anyone, no matter how nice looking they are. So I just feel like just leave the wives out of it. I feel that Donald Trump needs to be more presidential now, be the grown up in the room, so to speak. And then can I ask you about what you think about the Kasich?
Yeah, but I want to ask you a couple of things here about your comments. But go ahead. Yeah, ask me the case again.
I feel like there's something underhanded about the brokered and the contested conventions, because I feel that Governor Kasich, it just seems like he's going to be president, even if it has to be given to him. And I feel like even if they go to the convention, they don't have enough delegates, that the one that has the most, if it's Donald Trump, should get the nomination. So I have a problem with it just being handed to someone. That's overruling the will of the people.
Now, wait a minute. That would be handing it to somebody. If they don't have 1237 and you give it to them anyway, that would be handing it to them.
Well, not if you have the one that has the most. Obviously, you have the will of the people, the majority of the people. This is what the majority of the people want.
Yeah, but the RNC is going to turn around. I know this is what they're plotting. I know this is what they want to do. Whether they're able to pull this off or not remains to be seen. What they want to do is if neither Cruz nor Trump gets 1237, they want to be able to make the case that both have been rejected by voters, since not enough voters thought enough of either one of them to make them a nominee. So they're officially done, and that will free it up for the RNC to then choose the candidate they want at the convention. That's what I
understand that, but don't you feel like it should really go to the majority? What is your opinion on that?
The rule's the rule. You got to get to 1237. If you don't get to 1237, then we start having ballots. I think you've got to cajole, you've got to bend, you've got to shape, you've got to bargain, you've got to do what you can to win this thing. I'm not in favor of the RNC disqualifying Trump or Cruz, but if nobody gets 1237, nobody gets the rule's the rule. The problem is these guys are going to be rewriting these rules. Rule 40 right now, that was written in 2012. By the way, Rule 40 was not written for this convention. And I don't want anybody believing I'm laboring under a misconception. Rule 40 was written back in 2012, and it was designed to protect Romney from people like Ron Paul. Rule 40 was never intended to survive for this convention, but so far it does because the rules have not been rewritten. That'll happen this month. But Rule 40, as it's written, says that no candidate can get the nomination, regardless what happens, if he has not won a minimum majority number of delegates in 8 states in the primaries. Well, that's bye-bye Kasich. Kasich is not even close. It's sayonara Kasich. But that rule isn't going to stand. They're going to rewrite that rule. If they have to rewrite that rule to say that all you have to do is to have won one state, that legalizes Kasich. They can do whatever they want. They write the rules. They're not going to change the 1237, though. They're going to use that as a disqualifier. Now, the party can do any number of things here. I mean, they can take your advice and go for the unity and say, look, if we've got a guy, 1237 was our number, and we get somebody the closest to it is 1100, 127 short or whatever it is. But how do you, they'll have to change the rules saying that by acclamation, vote, whatever, but it's not that easy because these delegates, this is a real, do you know Trump is facing a potential disaster right now? South Carolina's delegates, in order to have those delegates pledged to you, there's a rule in South Carolina that you have to pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. Well, Trump answered a question recently that he might have changed his mind about supporting the nominee based on the fact that people are not treating him fairly or what have you. Well, now he is at risk of having violated one of the rules of the South Carolina primary. He now faces, if he actually doesn't revise this, if South Carolina wanted to, they could deny Trump the delegates that he won there. Now, all hell would break out if that happened, but it's a possibility. And people are saying, did Trump even know? This is what they're asking now. Does Trump even have a staff that knows the rules about how all this stuff works? He just hired a guy and asked the RNC in that little meeting they had yesterday. He actually asked Reince Priebus, is my guy any good? That's a news report I read. He asked the RNC, is this guy I've hired any good at this delegate stuff? I'm making up the words. But the point is, when you get down to delegates and how they're apportioned and how they're chosen, before I have to go to break, let me present one possibility. First ballot, candidate needs 1237. The rule is that whoever wins the state in the primary automatically gets all those delegates. But, folks, it could be in a state with 49 delegates that 40 of them hate Trump, that have to vote for him on the first ballot, that the party has chosen them specifically for a second and third ballot vote to vote against Trump. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. And we're not going to know until it starts to play out who's doing what with it.
The center of the radio universe. Rush on the EIB network.
Yes, folks, I got it. Women in Ohio are complaining about the unfairness of having to pay $4 a year taxes on tampons. And other women years ago complained about having to pay $12 a month for contraception. A lot of women complaining about a lot of expenses out there on the left. And on the basis that it's unfair because men do not have to. Men pay. Men pay. Men pay in so many ways for all of this stuff. I can't even begin to tabulate a financial value or cost. Anyway, Scott in Los Angeles, I'm going to get started with you. We're not going to finish before the break, but we'll get started. How are you doing, sir?
Good, Rush. Okay, so I was listening to some of the stuff you said earlier, and you were talking about the most destructive force is the Democrat Party. But at this point, I see the most destructive force is right-wing talk radio. And what we've seen is there's very few places you can tune in and get an objective view without just a one-side complete slant. And what they're doing is they're spending 8 months trashing and trying to convince millions of voters to vote for their guy, as opposed to trying to reach out to the one guy who's energized the party and then maybe educate.
All right,
hang on.
Hang on. This is going to be good. Okay, back to Scott in Los Angeles. I really appreciate your holding to the break. I thought I had more time prior to that break than we did. But you basically, if I understand, your problem is with what you call right-wing talk radio, which is doing what again?
They are spending 3 hours in the morning show, 3 hours in the afternoon show, 3 hours in the evening show. It is all anti-Trump. So much so that I heard one guy in the morning the other day say that Donald Trump said that women should be put in prison. And I listened to that interview. Donald Trump did not say that. And then he talks about how truth lives here. How can truth live here if you're making up lies? But all of his supporters on his Facebook, keep going with the truth. You're doing the right thing. You know, right-wing talk radio now is more interested in stopping Trump than they are stopping ISIS, to use a line from what you said.
Yeah. One problem, there are some people listening to you right now who think that there's a lot of talk radio guys in a tank for Trump.
And they say that you're one, but you realize there is a definition of in the tank for Trump. In the tank for Trump just means you haven't joined the party of I hate Trump, I will not vote for Trump, I will campaign, I will caucus for Trump, I will influence states, influence people to get in there and vote against Trump. You and a gentleman that comes on after you are listed as in the tank for Trump because you don't, smear him for 3 hours during your show every day. Well, we've got 8 months of 3 hours a day. That's a lot of hours to be anti-Trump. Be for your guy. Don't be against.
Are you're a Trumpist?
I'm not going to give myself a name like that. I support Donald Trump, but I haven't labeled myself as a Trumpist.
Well, I don't mean it as a pejorative.
I know. I just don't know what that word means. But I do support Donald Trump because he is taking on the entire world. Look, Ted Cruz is the absolute best debater. Can we agree to that? He's had 11 shots at Donald Trump, but now he needs this one-on-one debate. Really? You need another debate? Are you going to, when China builds into the South China Sea, are you going to come to the media and say, if I can just get one debate with the leader of China, a one-on-one debate, we can solve this? Debating doesn't necessarily solve these problems.
Well, you have uttered quite a lot here.
I got more.
Well, let me hear it. Before I react to this, what else is on your mind? What else is bothering you or got you wired? What is it?
The big thing is you got one guy who has energized the party, brought a lot of people into it, a lot of energy. Bernie Sanders has that on his side. There is no left-wing talk radio trashing Bernie. It's just Bernie and Hillary. Okay, on our side, we've got Donald Trump, who has energized the party, has got crossover votes, and just got people excited that we don't have to deal with their guy this time. And their guy is like the Karl Rove and the insiders. But now it's talk radio's guy. It's still not we the people's guy. And as opposed to talk radio trying to influence millions of people to hashtag never Trump, never vote for Trump, why didn't they spend 8 months trying to communicate with Donald Trump?
None of this is new. I mean, in previous campaigns, you've had various different talk shows in primaries.
The new part of this, Rush, is the energy behind Donald Trump. Because last time you could go with the Mitt Romney crap and everybody trying to get on Mitt Romney and destroy Newt Gingrich. I mean, he was the best Speaker of the House we ever had, and he's labeled the worst progressive in the world. But
by the way, what would you think if Trump wins the nomination? What do you think if he chose Newt as his vice presidential running mate?
Man, where do I sign up?
You'd go for that.
I'd love that. Newt Gingrich knows, that's the sad thing about what's going on here with Cruz, is Cruz does know some inside stuff that might be helpful to a Trump presidency. Newt Gingrich also has that knowledge and that experience that would be very helpful to a Trump presidency.
Well, okay. You put me in a not uncomfortable. I just never comment on other talk shows. It's a matter of policy. It's a no-win. It is. Well, it's just a no-win. From my standpoint position, there's nothing good that can come from that. So I'll just let that go. Although I don't know how unusual it really is. We just have simply really feverish passions that are equally, or maybe not equally, but they're divided. I mean, in the last Republican primaries, there wasn't this kind of passion for anybody. I mean, Romney never had this kind of passion. McCain never had this kind of passion, even among his supporters. And the people that ran and didn't lose, they didn't have this kind of passion. So it's kind of new territory. You know, I can explain the Cruz supporters. I can explain the Trump supporters. And if I try to, I anger the other side of whichever side I'm speaking. But I understand it all. I understand every syllable of it. I understand why Trump's people support him. I understand why they won't abandon him. I understand why the Cruzers are totally into Cruz. And it's interesting. There's an overlap. There's one thing that is common to both groups. Both groups, the Cruzers and the Trumpists, or the Trumpsters, or the Trumpers, whatever you want to call them, they both think their guy is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to fix what's wrong. The Trump people think, finally, Michael, we finally got somebody that's not part of the establishment and everything that means. On the Cruz side, finally, after all of these years of battling, we finally have the best damn conservative we've had since Reagan. Somebody can do it all, speak it, debate it, explain it, articulate it. And the Trump people are just as passionate. And, of course, with that passion comes an equally passionate opposition to anybody else. And a profound frustration that people don't see the passion the way the supporters feel it. For example, the Cruz people are so into this. It's such a God opportunity. It's a godsend. It's a once in everybody's lifetime opportunity to really fix this in their minds. Infuse conservatism. Somebody knows how to do it, won't back down from it, will not capitulate when he gets there. And they're frustrated that others don't see it. And they're just as frustrated as they are excited. The Trump people, it's the same thing. They're just as passionate, and they're just as frustrated that opponents don't see the great opportunity here. And this is why everybody's worried about unity when it's all over. That it's gotten so divisive and so vitriolic and so personal that when it's over, how in the world do the people whose guy lost, whoever it is, just forget it and sign up with the winner? Because the anti-passion, the cruisers, their anti-Trump passion, it's not just, I don't like the guy. It is profound, deep profound. And same thing with the Trumpists. So that's why the GOP, in its infinite wisdom, is thinking that the root here is to somehow take all this away from both sides and pick somebody from their club, the old reliable establishment. And even if they lose, so be it. They can work with Hillary. She's an establishment babe. They're part of the establishment. They'll get to hold on to what fiefdoms they've got. They'll be able to maintain their futures and their careers. But they can't be assured of that with either Trump or Cruz. So that's the danger in the Republican establishment. They'll be content to lose. Not that they want to. It's a difference here. Being okay with losing is not the same as wanting to. But they're telling themselves that it would be much better for them personally and professionally to lose to Hillary than to lose control of the party, which is how they view Cruz and Trump both. I got to take a brief time out. Appreciate the call, Scott. We will be back after this.
He makes it look easy, but it's not. Rush on the EIB network.
It's Open Line Friday. Rush Limbaugh. And back to the phones, more Los Angeles. Rob, great to have you with us, sir. Hello.
Hello. It's great to speak with you, Mr. Limbaugh. I've been a fan for a very, very long time.
I appreciate your calling, sir. Thank you.
I'll tell you, I've been listening to the show today. I'm listening to the news, and with this, I could go in any direction. My head's going to explode. But this thing with Trump and this abortion comment, I absolutely agree with you that it was a trap, but it really does show how out of control, and maybe even more so than I thought.
Let me jump in here. I want to make one thing clear about this that I probably haven't. I want one more stab at this. This whole interview that Chris Matthews did with Trump, yes, he's asking Trump questions, and yes, he's trying to trip Trump up on abortion. My point about that is that whole interview was essentially an attack on the Republican Party, not just Trump. It set up a campaign narrative for the Democrats to use against the entire party, not just Trump. It doesn't matter Trump's a nominee or not. They're still going to be able to use this, or they're going to try. That what Matthews did was establish another vein of the war on women meme, and to try to keep that alive. And it wasn't just aimed at Trump. It was designed, once again, to caricature or characterize the entire Republican Party. And that's why I reacted to it the way I did. Not because I'm worried about what it did to Trump. I'm concerned the Republican Party doesn't have an answer for this. The Republican Party themselves doesn't know what to do with this war on women business. And it's about time they came up with something, because it's ridiculous. Women out there asking to be exempted from taxes for tampons, and this is going to happen. This is what, folks, this kind of feminism is eventually going to get what it wants. You laugh about it. Oh, my God, look at these women in Ohio. They don't want to pay $4 a year. The same thing happened with contraceptives. But Rush, I thought you were opposed to tax. I am opposed to taxes. That's not what this is about. They're dividing us. These women are saying we shouldn't pay this tax because men don't have to pay an equivalent tax. They're doing everything they can to drive wedges between us, between men and women, between liberals, conservatives, between races. I can't wait to get this demographic survey that the Pew people done. I'm going to do it the next hour. This whole thing that Matthews did was actually aimed and designed to impugn the entire party. And that's why when I see people jumping all over Trump for this, they better be very careful. Because if they don't understand what the purpose of that was, they're going to end up being ensnared in it themselves. I'm sorry, you made me want to make that point. I apologize for interrupting you, but go ahead and finish your point now.
Oh, well, the point I was trying to make was just basically I think you were the one who broke it down. I think it was yesterday. just saying if you're posed with a hypothetical question to say if blank is made illegal and someone commits blank, should they be punished? And you say, well, yeah, I guess so. They should be punished if it was something illegal. I'm still kind of scratching my head, wondering, okay, what's the problem with that? I realize the way that they're spinning it, but I really do feel like if people just took a break and just took a step back and actually listened to the tape.
Because let me tell you what's wrong with it. You're helping me make my point. What's wrong with it is that abortion isn't going to become illegal in this campaign or the next, and the Republican Party does not have a policy that's designed to punish women and put them in jail for it. And that, nevertheless, is what Chris Matthews and the Democrat Party and the media are trying to create with that whole line of hypothetical questions. You can give your answer. A lot of people said, Rush, what are you defending Trump for? If you really are pro-life, and if the hypothetical is presented to you, if you're pro-life, you think it's wrong, then somebody ought to be punished for it if it's a crime, right? So you ought to have an answer for it. The whole thing's set up because there's nobody out there actively campaigning to make it a crime. The pro-life movement is about changing minds and hearts. It's not about putting people in jail. Nobody, I don't know anybody talking about putting people in jail. And asking this line of question is not designed to find out what Trump thinks about this. It's not what Matthews was trying to do. He's doing the same thing that Stephanopoulos is trying to do, and that is tar and feather the entire Republican Party as a bunch of people who want to put women in jail, who want to create dual societies where women are subordinate and barefoot pregnant kids, whatever it is, this bias and prejudice they think we have, or that they're trying to create, they're trying to continue it and grow it and expand it. That's why they asked it as a hypothetical. Can anybody tell me, do you know of anybody, maybe I'm wrong, is there anybody in the pro-life movement who wants to put women in jail right now today as part of reversing Roe versus Wade?
I've never heard that. That was such a completely out of left field question. I wish Trump would have been better prepared to answer that. But like you said, it hasn't been an issue in this campaign. And why should, I mean, it's like saying you should have a plan for the hypothetical zombie apocalypse, just in case, because you're going to be president, so you should know this stuff. I don't think you can expect everybody to have an answer for any kind of a hypothetical.
Except,
something not even on the table.
Wait a second. No. See, this one is fundamental. If the Republican Party does not, by Republican Party I mean everybody, conservatives, moderates, liberates, middle block, libertarians, whatever. This whole issue that has become known as the war on women, there's still people on our side laughing at it. Think it's just so ridiculous. Nobody's going to fall for this. And I hate to tell you, but the people on the left have been so ill-educated and so infused with fear, they do believe it. That's why the question in the hypothetical was asked. And it was an attempt to characterize and impugn the entire Republican Party conservative movement. And everybody smugly out there, smugly saying, what a fool Trump made of himself. Why, he didn't have an answer for it. Well, neither does the Republican Party. You can sit there and laugh and get smug that Trump embarrassed himself and hurt himself. But if you don't understand that they don't have anything but this and the race card to play. Their policies are abject failures. And we don't have anybody out there talking about that either. The Democrat Party, the leftist movement, is an absolute disaster. Their policies have led to the messes that we are in. The only cards they've got to play are abortion and race. And every time they play them, after all these years, there still isn't an effective answer to nuke it and do away with it. And they tried it again this week.
The courage to fight and the talent to succeed. Rush on the EIB network.
And once again, the fastest 3 hours in media. It's just rolling right on. We've got 2 hours down, just one more to go. Open Line Friday featuring your phone calls today. If people want to weigh in, your chance to do so, 800-282-2882. Back before you know it. Despite everything, beating and surpassing all audience expectations every day. That's right. Still pulling that off. Fight everything. Rush Limbaugh here to EIB Network. Great to have you with us this week.
And now, from sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Open Line Friday. One big, exciting broadcast hour remains at 800-282-2882. Delight to have you here. I'm just telling you, folks, two things. You're going to run for President of the United States. You're going to seek the Republican Party presidential nomination. You had better study up on the way they go after you on abortion. You had better study up and figure out what you think about it, and you better be able to rattle it off. And you better be able to spot a phony premise right off the bat and refuse to answer it and totally change the subject or the direction of the question, because I'm here to tell you. The question that Chris Matthews asked Trump was not aimed at getting an answer. The question was meant to shape. It was meant to accuse. It was meant to characterize. When you listen to these interviews, particularly things like Matthews, MSNBC, CNN, forget that there is a question mark at the end. There's no doubt in my mind, Trump looked at Matthews as a guy he can deal with, somebody you got to do a deal with. He doesn't look at Matthews as somebody trying to destroy him. I don't know, maybe Trump thinks he can't be destroyed anyway. But it's clear, if you're going to make up your mind to go on MSNBC running for the Republican presidential nomination, you have got to be prepared for what it's really about. It is aimed at destroying you. It is aimed at ruining your candidacy. It is designed to make you look like a fool. That's what they think we are anyway. It is designed to help Hillary Clinton. It is not designed to find out what Donald Trump or anybody else really thinks about abortion, because they think they already know what you think about abortion, and I think about it, and everybody else. Journalists, I've gotten blue in the face explaining it. It took me a couple of years to learn it. Whenever you do an interview, they're not really interested in what you think. And if you think you can change a journalist's mind, don't do the interview, because that's not the agenda. The journalist is there. When you're a conservative and the journalist is a liberal, the journalist is there to embarrass you, to expose you, to destroy you, whatever, however they can do it. There's no real desire to find out what you think about something. And if you're not, you've got to be prepared for that. Anybody running for the presidency on the Republican side has to be prepared for this. It's amazing how few really are, even after all this time. And the same thing goes for anything about race. There are ways to deal with it that our side hasn't figured out. The whole point of interviews like this is to establish, not answer, not elucidate, not learn. It is to establish, it's to pigeonhole. Topic doesn't matter. Whenever it's one of these defining issues where the left thinks they have the morally superior position, you're not going to change their mind. You're not going to enlighten them. You're not going to open their minds. You're not going to show them that you might be right. You're not going to intrigue them. They're not there to be intrigued. They're not there to learn. They're not there to do anything other than expose you for the fraud that they believe you are. They did it with Romney. They did it with George W. Bush. They did it with Ronald Reagan. They're doing it with Trump. They're going to do it to Ted Cruz. They have been doing it to Ted Cruz. And they did it to McCain. And they're going to get around to doing it to Kasich if it's ever necessary. And yeah, it may only be March when this happens. I know it's April today. It may only be March when this happens. But remember, all of this is aimed at helping Hillary Clinton. It's all about winning in November. Plain and simple. I'll tell you something else, the Republican National Committee. Look at these story, Politico story. Trump makes nice with RNC. Donald Trump has broken the Republican Party on Thursday. To this Politico, so it's not my words. I'm just reading what the Politico writes here. Donald Trump has broken the Republican Party on Thursday, took his most visible steps to fix it, with a looming loss in Wisconsin vastly increasing the odds. Trump went to Capitol Hill to meet with RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, with whom he's had a lukewarm relationship. Sure are a lot of assumptions in that opening sentence. Trump has broken the GOP. Trump hasn't broken the GOP. Trump is a result of a broken GOP. The GOP broke the GOP. The Republican establishment broke the GOP. Those close to Trump say, despite appearances to the contrary, he's interested in coalescing the party around him and reaching out to key. There's no question he is. There's no question. Anybody running would love to have the party behind him and unify and so forth and go forth as a major, big, powerful force. But that isn't going to happen. So a lot of candidates have the mindset they have to do this without the aid of the party, and some think even with the aid of the party, that is not helpful. I just soon go it alone without the party behind me. That would be pretty much any conservative. Karl Rove today, Washington Examiner. Fresh face might be best GOP nominee. One thing that unites many supporters of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is the suspicion that party elders might try to hand the nomination to another candidate. If neither Trump nor Cruz arrives in Cleveland, 1,237 delegates required to win. Karl Rove, a man many view as the physical embodiment of the establishment, has poured gallons of fuel on the Republican fire. Appearing on the Hugh Hewitt radio show Thursday evening, Rove said a fresh face chosen at the convention might turn the Republicans' fortunes around and win in November. So Rove is of the belief that many of you are you're tired and you're worn out. You're tired of Trump, you're tired of Cruz. You don't want Kasich, so maybe a fresh face. Hugh Hewitt said to Rove, well, who is the most electable Republican of the people who could be available to run? And Rove said, well, all the current candidates have their problems. There might be an outsider, though, with just the right combination of attributes who could lead Republicans to victory. Here's what Rove said. If we have somebody who we think has been battle-tested, strong conservative principles, the ability to articulate them, and they are nominated at this convention, there'll be a lot of acrimony from the people who were seeking the nomination. But if it's somebody who has those convictions that they can express in a compelling way, we could come out of the convention in a relatively strong position. And a fresh face might be the thing that could give us a chance to turn this election and win in November against Hillary. Well, am I wrong in assuming that Mr. Rove thinks we're destined to lose as things stand now? Let me read this again. A fresh face might be the thing that could give us a chance to turn this election and win in November against Hillary. That sounds to me like that Rove and others in his group believe that with Trump we lose, with Cruz we lose, Kasich's not a factor, at least not in the primary process. Folks, I was just talking about the passion that exists on both sides here. The passion that Trump voters have for him is equaled by the passion they have in opposition to Cruz, and it's the same with Cruz people. Cruz supporters are so passionate of Cruz, and they are so angry and frustrated at Trump supporters for not seeing the light. And the Republican Party had better be careful, because if they end up turning a fire hose on the passions of all of these voters, there is no way the party survives. And that's what you've got this burning passion. You've got a significant segment of Republican voters It's a large group of people. All of the energy in this primary season is on the Republican side. Look at that turnout. That turnout is through the roof. The establishment doesn't have a single person can generate this kind of turnout. There's not a single person they can choose from their fresh faces that would come anywhere near equaling this kind of excitement. Nowhere near maintaining this kind of excitement, leading to continued turnout records, which are happening in primaries. If they do what these stories indicate they're thinking of doing, it's the equivalent of turning a fire hose on these passions and potentially on both groups of voters. And if just one of these groups of voters decides to sit it out, then it doesn't matter what fresh face they come up with. And that's why there are some people who think that the Republican establishment is totally cool with that. Totally cool with maintaining the establishment, but losing to Hillary. Because at least they maintain themselves. They sustain in their jobs. They sustain in their lifestyles. They remain entrenched where they are. But I don't know how you quell these passions and then convert this passion to somebody who has not run or somebody who has run and has been shellacked. But apparently it's what they're plotting or planning.
Members of the media, do not panic. Your show prep will continue with Rush on the EIB network.
Now they got a squeeze box. And in Ohio, they want to eliminate the squeeze box tax. Here's Tony in Philadelphia. Great that you waited, sir. Welcome to the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. It is an absolute honor to speak to you from the birthplace of our nation, Philadelphia. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You bet, sir.
To get to my point, you had mentioned something earlier in the show, way in the beginning, that I think is foundational to any thought for a conservative and for a liberal, and I think what basically separates us, and that's this. Democrats, and please correct me if I get you wrong anywhere, but the Democrats want to change the country in a way that not only relativizes the Constitution, but delegitimizes it, basically rendering it unnecessary. Is that correct?
Yeah, short of being able to erase it, to basically
short of being able to
render it irrelevant on the basis that it is immoral and illegitimate because it was written by racists, it was written by wealthy white guys, whatever. They everything they could do, particularly the Bill of Rights. First Amendment, if they could rewrite those or somehow make those irrelevant in people's minds, if they can attack the First Amendment, they can attack Second Amendment, free speech, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble. I mean, that would be 50% of their ball game right there. And look, and they're succeeding. They're succeeding against religion and speech. Religion, generally, speech on college campus.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go further than you, Rush, and I'm going to say that's basically the foundational principle for their thought. And it's really, I think a lot of it, I think you would agree with me, all those things about, they were racist, they were homophobic. I've even heard that, it's old and outdated. Those are just smoke screens. They absolutely hate the Constitution. They cannot stand it. And the reason why I believe that's the truth is because the Constitution limits their power. It says, no, the power doesn't rely on the government. The power lies in the people. And for them, it's all about power. It's all about power. Now, me as a conservative, now unfortunately, of course, as you've pointed out earlier, under the Obama administration, that process has been greatly accelerated, and that is very unfortunate. And I, as a conservative, just to speak to the passion that you were talking about just a few seconds ago, I, as a passionate conservative, want this not only to be stopped, but reversed. I think there needs to be a massive recheck a recheck that brings us back to the Constitution, that reverses everything that Obama has done, not just Obama, but what the establishment Republicans have allowed and vacillated on and promoted.
Well, you know, let me tell you something. You're right about two things. You're right, number one, that all we do ever do is talk about stopping things. And the reason is because we're overwhelmed. We wake up every day and we learn of a new assault that they are making on everything we used to consider as normal and happy and fun and okay and not problematic. We wake up every day and find out there's a bunch of miserable, agitated, angry people who think that they're being discriminated against for whatever reason or whatever, and they are launching daily assaults on our core beliefs. So we marshal forces to just stop it. There isn't even time to think about reversing or advancing any of this. And I agree with you, that's got to happen. The second thing you're right about is your interpretation of their view of the Constitution. They hate it precisely because it limits government. They even admit this. Their intellectuals write things. There's a, starting way back in FDR, they wanted a second Bill of Rights that established the powers of the government. But this isn't even taught anymore. The proper role of the Constitution, the reason it's why Hillsdale is doing all that they're doing, giving free courses online, advertising them here on this program. They're desperate to spread the word of the Constitution because it's not being properly taught. The Constitution was written specifically to limit government. The founders knew all too well what the natural tendency of government and bureaucracy is. It is to grow, to smother, to assume power, never relinquish it. It's the end of freedom. The only way government can grow is to deny liberty and freedom as often as possible, under the guise, of course, of expanding it. It's all a big lie. There's this guy named, I keep forgetting his name. He's the husband of Samantha Power. He's a big lawyer. Weird name. Anyway, it'll come to me in just a second. He has actually written, and people debate this intellectually, that the Constitution is a charter of negative liberties. And I remember when I first heard that, some think tank people were explaining it. What do you mean, charter of negative liberty? Cass Sunstein, what kind of perverted mind looks at the Constitution as a charter of negative liberties? And they took me through it. I said, well, all it does is limit government. From the standpoint of a pro-big government, authoritarian, tyrannical thinking type human being, the Constitution is an enemy document. And its liberties as to government are negative because all it does is tell government what it can't do. It can't stop free speech. It can't stop people worshiping. It can't stop people using guns to protect them. It can't stop this. It can't stop. And they hate it because it is a direct assault on their quest for power. And it's not even something secret. They're open about it now. And because education has been so woefully corrupted, a bunch of young people have no idea what the Constitution really is, and it's a foreign language when they hear it limits government.
Rush Limbaugh. The saga continues.
Okay, Pew survey for people, press, whatever, Pew Research Center for people in the press, put out this massive research product recently, 10 demographic trends that are shaping the United States and the world. And if you read these, if you go into reading these with any kind of a pessimistic attitude, you would be totally within your logical bounds to conclude that the country's done as you've known it. It's always going to be in America. But it increasingly looks like it will be less and less like the America that was founded. There'll always be a United States, we think. Starts out this way. Americans are more racially and ethnically diverse than in the past, and the U.S. is projected to be even more diverse in the coming decades. By the year 2055, United States will not have a single racial or ethnic majority. Much of this change has been driven by immigration. Can I sum this up for you? But what you're going to hear here, I'm going to tell you why all of this happened. The Great Society of LBJ in 1964 coincides with Ted Kennedy demanding that immigration be reinstituted in 1965. And I am here to tell you that the problems we face today are the direct result of the Great Society being used to hide massive numbers of illegal immigration. The Great Society, of course, was founded with great compassion. It was founded to, part of it, the war on poverty. Part of it was to end the great disparities that existed economically from both groups of people, classes of people, and what have you. And, of course, its objectives were purely wonderful. Oh, my goodness, it's so much class and so many good intentions and so much compassion. And it was all about government picking winners and losers. It set the table for affirmative action. It set the table for pretty much every destructive thing the left has come up with. The Great Society, which, of course, was a perverted belief that government could be the sole architect of an acceptable, good, and fair and just society. And, of course, the premise under which it took place was that America was not good and was not nice and was not fair. And only the government of Lyndon Baines Johnson would be able to fix this. So they come up with a Great Society, which a lot of people instinctively support. Oh, this sounds so wonderful. Oh, my God, it's just so wonderful. And while all this is going on, illegal immigration began in droves, and it was basically hidden. What was going on in immigration happened out of sight. Now, Pew doesn't say any of this. Pew just talks about all this as though just an act of God. This is just normal human evolution, that the racial and ethnic and religious and other demographic shifts, why, they're just happening. No, they're not just happening. They're the result of policy. They are the result of purposeful, objective policy put together by leftists. So again, by 2055, the U.S. will not have a single racial or ethnic majority. And you are some people, well, that would be wonderful, Mr. Limbaugh. That would be absolutely wonderful. Then nobody would have an unfair advantage over anybody. Is that what you're saying, Mr.? No, that's not what we're saying. It means bye-bye dominant culture. It means bye-bye distinct American culture. It means bye-bye what we all grew up in. Nearly 59 million immigrants have arrived in the U.S. in the past 50 years, mostly from Latin America and Asia. They don't tell you how many are illegal. And then they don't tell you about further results, such as birth of illegal immigrants in America, the children of illegal immigrants. Today, a near record 14% of the country's population is foreign-born, compared to just 5% in 1965. What's wrong with that, Mr. Limbaugh? What's wrong with it? You understand how it happened is what's potentially problematic about it. It's not just evolution. It's not just people seeking a better life. This has been a purposeful assault on a distinct and unique American culture. Item number 2, Asia has replaced Latin America, including Mexico, as the biggest source of new immigrants to the U.S. In a reversal of one of the largest mass migrations in modern histoire, Net migration flows from Mexico to the U.S. turned negative between 2009 and 2014, but that's because the economy plunged. There was less reason to come. And the inflow was mitigated by people leaving and going home until they found it was time to return. Anyway, number 3, America's demographic changes are shifting the electorate and American politics. The 2016 electorate will be the most diverse in U.S. histoire due to strong growth among Hispanic eligible voters, particularly U.S.-born youth. Well, there you go. This is precisely what everybody's been warning about. This is exactly why all this illegal immigration hidden behind the Great Society has been a voter registration drive, massive voter registration drive, commenced by Teddy Kennedy in 1965. It is coming to fruition. Number 4, millennials, that is, young adults born after 1980, are the new generation to watch, according to the Pew Research Center. Millennials have likely surpassed baby boomers as the largest U.S. generation, and they differ significantly from their parents in many ways and their elders. They're the most racially diverse generation in America. 43% of millennial adults are non-white, the highest share of any generation. And while they're on track to be the most educated generation to date, this has come at a cost. Many millennials are struggling with student debt. Exactly what I've been saying. They have destroyed the entire advantage and purpose of a college education by making it a millstone. You graduate with insurmountable debt. You cannot get ahead. You remain dependent on government, which now controls your student loan, by the way. And, of course, the Pew Research Center, while claiming that this is the most educated generation in recent years to date, they don't say educated with what and by whom. They don't at all get into just what is it these young millennials know. Do they know, for example, the Constitution was written to limit government? All you have to do is read, take your pick. There's some exceptions, of course, but, read things written by millennials, and without fail almost, every Republican referred to as either a joke or a pig or a racist or dangerous, certainly not somebody to be respected or taken seriously, and that is a product of education. They don't even know what they're saying. They're just regurgitating the crap that they have heard, been educated with, taught, what have you. Number 5, women's role in the labor force and leadership positions has grown dramatically. The labor force participation rate for American women has risen steadily since the 1960s. Mothers were the sole primary breadwinner in a record 40% of all households with children in 2011. Mothers were the sole or primary breadwinner in a record 40% of all households.
What is it? What's so wrong with that, Rush?
If you do not understand the dramatic, significant change this represents and how it advantages liberalism in the Democrat Party. That's all I'm saying here. You can argue whether this stuff is good or bad. I'm not. Remember, everything here happens under the premise that these people have got to be stopped politically. You can't deny what is happening to our country. You can't deny these dramatic attacks, assaults on the very fundamental building blocks of this country. Number 6, the American family is changing. After decades of declining marriage rates, the share of American adults who have never been married is at an historic high, yet a lot of them have kids. Two-parent households are on the decline. 1 in 6 American kids now live in a blended family. The roles of mothers and fathers are converging. due in part to the rise of breadwinner moms. Dads are doing more housework and child care, while moms are doing more paid work outside the home. Number 7, the share of Americans who live in middle-class households is shrinking. And that is really all you need to know about the future of economic growth, the potential for it, and the viability of the American dream, which really was never a house. I mean, that was a symbol. The American dream, American exceptionalism, the one place in the world, one place in the history of humanity where average, ordinary, everyday, middle-class people had all kinds of opportunity to move up, to educate themselves, to earn more money, have a higher standard of living for themselves and their family. Now, even the quest for that is condemned as selfish and materialistic and so forth. But traditionally, this is what people wanted. It was always for the betterment of their children. It was always to improve the lives of their kids. Everybody wanted their lives to have better lives than they did, and that was just. It was considered decent and good. Now it's not. Now it's selfish, it's greedy. Now it's not realizing daily realities that not everybody can. Now we've all got to know our place. You've got to realize your lot in life may be where you're born. No, that's always the way it was everywhere else in the world. Number 8, Christians are declining as a share of the U.S. population. The number of U.S. adults who do not identify with any organized religion has grown. Plays right into the hands of the American left. You can replace religion with climate change. They can replace religion with the environment in general or whatever else. Number 9, the world's religious makeup will look differently by 2050. I don't have the details for this. We'll post a link to this piece at rushlimbaugh.com. And I got to take a break. I'm looking at the clock. If I don't, I'm going to be in heap big trouble. Right?
The most powerful name in talk radio, Rush, on the EIB network.
We'll link to that Pew Research Center on the demographic shifts in the country. You go through that, each of these points. There's much data included I didn't share with you, didn't read, take too much time, but apply it to whatever issues are happening, like the bathroom law in North Carolina or the religious freedom laws in Indiana or Georgia. Apply this demographic stuff that you see in this story with all these so-called controversial things happening. Why in the world do I mean, these bathroom laws are absurd. And people who haven't even read this legislation are coming out totally in support of it, which basically lets anybody use whatever bathroom they want to use based on how they want to present that day. You'll understand how all this is happening, and you'll see, folks, it is imperative that Hillary Clinton not be elected. This stuff's got, we have to stop it first before there can be any reversal and advancement. Anyway, let me grab one more call here before we have to say bye for the weekend. This is Hank in Traverse City, Michigan. Great to have you, Hank. Welcome to the program. Not there. Who do we have? Where should I go next? That'd be David in Fremont, Ohio. Great to have you. Hello. Are the phone's dead? Is nobody there? Okay, we'll try Janice in Rancho Cucamonga, California. Janice, are you there? I think we got a what was it? Well, who is this? Oh, our phones are dead, folks. We have literally... Now somebody's talking out.
Janice?
You are Janice? Janice, welcome. I'm glad we finally connected with you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. First-time caller. I am a Trumpster. Ted Cruz is my second choice. I was more excited about it before the fighting started, of course. But I wanted to share that I think for us to win, that we do have to unite these two camps. And as difficult as it may be, I think we have to learn to appreciate the strengths and the weaknesses of these two men. And I kind of a biblical analogy that I have is I see Donald Trump as like King David and Ted Cruz like King Solomon. And Donald, King David's job was to drive the giants out of the land. And I see Donald's strength is the ability to do that. And he stands up to the media, gets crossover votes.
Well, look, let me jump in because I'm really out of time now. But you got a point here about if the establishment Republicans and Democrats are to be beat, somehow there's got to be some unification. I don't know how, but it has to happen. Back after this, folks.
Rated the #1 talk radio personality of all time, Rush Limbaugh, on the EIB network.
Okay, folks, that's it. Another excursion into broadcast excellence in the can. It'll be over at the Limbaugh Broadcast Museum. Great virtual museum at rushlimbaugh.com. One of the finest, most encyclopedic websites that you can find throughout the World Wide Web. Have a great weekend, and we will be back here on Monday.